So if you've been making Swiss meringue buttercream and you've had some issues with it, which a lot of people do, so don't worry, you are definitely not alone. I'm here to help you understand two of the most common scenarios that I see happening when it comes to messing up a Swiss meringue buttercreams. Hi, I'm Zaza, and I'm a French patisserie chef, trained patisserie chef, and cake designer, and I'm just so passionate about bringing together the best of patisserie and cake design. So if this is what you're into, definitely make sure to subscribe to this channel because there's a lot of cake design / patisserie goodies coming your way every single week. Okay, so when it comes to Swiss meringue buttercream, there's usually two things that tend to happen, and both things are completely related to temperature control. So the first thing is that you're making your meringue, you're adding your butter, and then it splits and you have like a hot mess inside of your bowl and you're freaking out. This tends to happen for two reasons, which I'm going to explain later on. The other thing that tends to happen is that you add your butter and then you get a buttercream soup. Basically, your buttercream goes completely liquid or like relatively liquid, at least way too liquid to be able to work with. And I'm going to show you how to resolve both problems and explain to you why they happen. So before we start diving a little bit deeper into the nitty-gritty of what can go wrong in your Swiss meringue buttercream, I want to go back to the basics. Let's do a little bit of Swiss meringue buttercream 101, shall we? So what you need to understand about Swiss meringue buttercream is that we are basically creating an emulsion, all right? So if you're familiar with the word, you might know that a ganache, for example, is an emulsion. Mayonnaise is an emulsion. So an emulsion is when we force together two elements that don't usually go well together, water and fat. So water content, in this case, our egg whites are basically water content because they are mostly made of water. And our butter is the fat content. So if you want to create a stable emulsion, there are a few aspects that have to be taken into account. And in the case of Swiss meringue buttercream, the main aspect you want to look at, obviously ratios is quite important. If you have a set recipe that you're following, chances are that that ratio is already calculated. Again, if you want to check my Swiss meringue buttercream recipe, then I'll link that below so that you can go and check my own recipe. I can vouch for that recipe. I've been using it for years in my business. The other super important element that you have to take into account is temperature, all right? So if you want to have a stable emulsion when making a Swiss meringue buttercream, you need to control your temperature. And to do that, all you have to do is have a thermometer, and then when you get used to make it more and more often, then you'll just know. Two things before we get started is I want you to look at that butter, okay? So I have two butters here. That one is cold out of the fridge, okay? And that one is room temperature, i.e. it's been out for a couple of hours, it is nice and soft and pliable. And this is kind of what we want to use in our Swiss meringue buttercream. Okay, so I'm about to add the butter, and as you can see, we're at 34.8 degrees Celsius. And we're going to add our butter, which is still, I've cut it in smaller chunks. It is still quite cold. I actually checked the butter and it's about 12 degrees. It is indeed definitely still too cold to be added to the meringue. But let's see what happens when we start mixing. Let's give it a bit of a scrape. All of our attached to the side. So here we have our buttercream, and as you can see, it's like quite grainy. It's not smooth at all, and it could have been much worse. The fact that I've added the butter around 34 degrees actually limited how bad it could have been. Had I added the butter under 34 degrees, around like the 30 degrees mark, then this would have been like actual hot mess. So to save our curdled buttercream, what we want now is heat, because the reason why it's curdled is because of having a butter that was too cold, or a meringue that was too cold and added the butter, just made it seize and then basically curdle. So what we want to do is bring some heat. So you can either have a bain-marie, so you just grab a saucepan with a bit of water on the bottom and then just add your bowl with the buttercream on top. And what we want to do basically is just heat the sides of the buttercream, the sides of the bowl, so that it's ever so slightly melted, and then we're going to stir back all in. So all that melted buttercream is basically going to bring back together our buttercream. The other way you can bring back your buttercream to life is by grabbing a small bowl and extracting about a little bit under a fourth of your buttercream. You put that in the microwave until it's almost melted, and then you pour that back onto your buttercream and you whip it and it will come back together. So because I've got the induction built in my Kenwood, I'm just going to use that, but the principle is exactly the same. So I've got my buttercream looking all sad and curdly, and I am simply going to put it on a very gentle heat just so that it starts melting the side of the bowl, and then it will come back to its intended beauty. There you go. So I'm going to put it on like low speed. So I've put it on 28 degrees. Even go as high as 29, 30 degrees, but not higher than that. And just by doing that, our buttercream is slowly going to come back together. And what I love about this induction mode is that it really gives us control over what's happening. Because we are setting the temperature to a maximum of 30 degrees, I know it's not going to go higher the way it potentially would with a bain-marie, but both ways work absolutely fine. So if you do not have a fancy kitchen mixer with an induction, then the bain-marie will work just fine. Just make sure to stay over it so that it doesn't melt too much. So as you can see here, the sides are starting to melt, and this is exactly what we want. We're going to stop the heat now. Beautiful. All right, so now our buttercream is lovely and absolutely smooth, ready to be flavored and ready to be used. So just a little bit of heat, got everything back together. So there you have it. Remember, too cold equals curdled. So if your meringue is too cold or if your butter is too cold, your Swiss meringue buttercream will most definitely curdle. And if both your meringue and your butter are too cold, then you've got yourself a winning ticket for curdled world. And yeah, you'll definitely will have to use some heat to bring everything back together. But the good news is, even when that happens, you can still save it. So do not throw it away. Make sure to use some heat to bring it all back together. It's just a little bit of chemistry, really. Nothing too crazy. The second scenario, same recipe, but now we've added the butter way too early. So the meringue was still a bit warm, butter was perfect room temperature, and the result is this soupy mess. And as you can see, this is way too soft. This could have been much worse, but the result is a buttercream that you just can't use like that to fill your cake, because as soon as you add another layer of sponge, it will just, everything will just pop out on the side because it's way too soft. So the solution here is very simple. We are going to pop that in the fridge and leave it to set for a few minutes. That process of saving the buttercream is weirdly longer because we have to wait for the cold to have an effect, and that just takes longer than reheated it gently, which is what happened in the other scenario. So we're just going to pop that into the fridge, and we'll mix it again later. And as you'll see, it will come back together. However, bear in mind that when the butter is melted a bit too far, so not completely melted because that would be, you would have to throw it away, but just enough so that it gets so soft and that the buttercream is a bit too liquid. We are changing the structure, the molecular structure of the butter, which means that the buttercream will not be as creamy as it would usually be. And it wouldn't be as creamy as it would be when you curdle the buttercream, like when we've seen the other scenario when the buttercream was too cold. It would still be creamy because we haven't really destructured the butter, which is what we're basically doing here. So it will still be usable, it will still taste delicious, it's just not going to be as creamy as it should have been. So this is something to bear in mind, okay? But we are still going to save it. Up in the fridge it goes. And we'll leave it for about at least 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I'll go check it and see if it's hard enough. So what we're looking for is so that it starts setting on the sides of the bowl. And when it's set a little bit hard on the side of the bowl, then we'll just pop it back onto the kitchen mixer, ready to be mixed. I'll see you then. Okay, so our buttercream has been in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes. And we've come to a solid enough situation where we can now start whipping it again. So usually at this point I like to switch the whisk with the paddle attachment, so I'm going to do just that, just because it is going to make it smoother. And if you check my video on how to make Swiss meringue buttercream, you'll see that I actually switched to the paddle attachment right after I've added the butter. Okay, so we're going to put our mixer on medium speed and we'll start whipping again. So we're just going to leave our buttercream to whip for a few minutes, and after that it should be the perfect consistency to be worked with. Already starts being really nice and smooth and fluffy already. We're just going to give it a bit of a scrape and then let's mix it one last time. All right, and now buttercream is ready to be used, flavored, filling cakes, however you want to use it. I mean, it's perfectly smooth, nice and light, and ready to go. Now you know the two main causes of messing up a Swiss meringue buttercream, and now you also know how to fix them. So let me know in the comments if you've ever had to face one of these situations, and let me know which one you're most looking forward to be facing so that you can rescue it yourself. And of course, if you like this content, make sure to subscribe and follow along for more patisserie/cake design adventures. Can't wait to see you for the next one. Take care.